I definitely was one of those people who picked up a camera when I was in my teens, but it was a hobby. Then once I was out of school, I realized, I really do want to do photography. I ended up doing a photography program at International Center of Photography in New York. I didn't necessarily need to do. I mean, people can for sure be self-taught. I personally needed some confidence around calling myself a photographer and then charging for that service. I started shooting weddings, and what was kind of a launching pad into different areas for me was some recalibration with the pandemic. I have an aunt and uncle who do landscape architecture, and so I decided to up-level my skill set in that area. So it was kind of a perfect pandemic-safe job to do. I did quite a bit of research and some online classes on what kind of gear do I really need for this. From there, just through connections on Instagram, I've been able to kind of grow the landscape architecture, then into architecture and interiors. Also started working for Sonoma Magazine, kind of overlaps with all of these things. It's gonna be a struggle to support yourself this way. Just do what you want.
Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm so happy to have you here. Today we have Eileen Roche, a photographer based in Sonoma County, California. She's a travel, interior, and lifestyle photographer, and her love for the natural world drives her to create imagery that furthers the causes she believes in, like thoughtful consumerism, sustainability, and regenerative practices. Eileen shoots digital and film, always looking for interesting light and compositions that evoke a deep sense of place. Whether it's a sprawling ranch house in California's wine country or a hidden waterfall oasis in Oaxaca, Mexico. So she's currently based in Sonoma County. Eileen is always seeking out new environments and new experiences through traveling the world, backpacking with her rescue dog, and road tripping in a van. So thank you so much for being here, Eileen. I'm really glad to have you.
Thanks for having me, Julie. Thank you for that wonderful intro.
Of course. Yeah. So we connected a couple months ago, maybe it was a year, and I have to say that our conversation was one of the things that sparked my idea for this whole video podcast because
Really?
when for listeners who aren't familiar, I also do some writing and I'm a photographer, and so in the past I've written photographers' bios for their websites, and Eileen and I worked together on her bio. So the words that I just said were some of the words that we came up with to illustrate who she is on her website. And yeah, when we had the conversation, and we talk, and I do an interview and just trying to get a sense of who you are and your inspiration as an artist and a photographer. And I came away from our conversation and I was like, there's so much good information in there. Personally, I'm interested in your creative journey and what inspires you and stuff because I'm a photographer as well. But when we talked, I was like, if I had recorded that and played that for somebody else, they would get something out of that. And it was just kind of this realization of I'm talking to these people that have so much experience and so much knowledge that other people want to have, and other people want an inside look at what your life is like, and how what your creative process is and things like that. So I have to thank you for that, because that was that initial conversation with you really sparked this idea, and so I wanted to sit back down with you.
I had no idea. I had no idea. And because you're so good at what you do, that I felt like from my end, I just rambled and I went on tangents. And then you were able to pull it into this really cohesive, beautiful, concise, bio. And to read it back was like, oh, okay, yeah. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think so many people, especially in starting to interview photographers for this project, it's so many photographers are hesitant to speak about themselves or their work. And I think it's again, it's just like people don't realize the wealth of knowledge and experience that they have until someone's maybe asking them questions about it and teasing it out. So that's really one of the things I want to do is like talk to you and get your story and actually record it.
No,
So no
that's cool. It's
pressure, but this better be amazing. No, I'm kidding.
well, you're giving me some confidence because when I was thinking about this, I was like, I don't know, man. I feel like I'm just figuring it out all the time, and I just kind of follow these different things that interest me. So I feel like my career has not. I'm not a person that's like, here's the linear thing to do,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. But do you
Um,
think anybody like I feel like that linear of like I picked up a camera and at 20 and I was so good and enamored and I became really like I just feel like that doesn't nobody's story is like that. And maybe photography or visuals have been, hobbies or something, but yeah, just give me a little bit of lay of the land with your career and how you ended up where you are.
I definitely was one of those people who picked up a camera when I was in my teens. And it was something that I shared with my dad and my grandfather, my great grandfather, actually. And actually, it's funny because tied up in that was also backpacking and just being out in nature and travel for sure. But I just had it as a hobby for decades because then once I was out of school, and I realized, I really do want to do photography. I was working as a project manager and producer at a brand strategy firm in San Francisco. And I was like, I don't really want to be the one hiring the talent and like figuring out the budgets and stuff. I just want to go out and do the creative of it. That was kind of the time in my life where I started to think seriously about how it could work. I ended up doing a photography program at International Center of Photography in New York, which, I didn't necessarily need to do. I mean, people can for sure be self-taught. I personally needed like some confidence around calling myself a photographer and then charging for that service.
I wanted to ask you, you said you took the course at International Center for Photography. What like kind of course was that? Like how long was it? Was it pretty involved, expensive? Just kind of curious like what time that was in your life and what kind of a commitment it was.
Yeah, it was a full-time commitment, a full year. It's pretty pricey. I don't know what it is now, but yeah, it was a full commitment. I did try to work on the side a bit, but it was kind of hard because I was new to New York. I didn't have any connections there. There was part of it that I'd always wanted to live in New York, and so
Yeah.
there was a little bit of that drive in terms of where I chose to do a program like this. I did apply to a couple other options. The program itself was great. I mean, the instructors are from all over the place and have all sorts of different backgrounds. Many are working photographers exhibiting in galleries in New York. I think for me, I didn't realize that I had a little bit more of a like commercial bend to my work and also where I saw myself taking my work. And the programs at ICP are divided between photojournalism and fine art. I felt like I didn't quite fit with either of those.
It's interesting that they don't have there's not a commercial wing or some sort of, nebulous.
I mean, they didn't call it fine art. They called it like general studies, and I think they've actually changed that now to be like something sounding more creative. But a
Hmm.
lot of the classes felt pretty fine art, and it just wasn't. That wasn't quite the right fit for me.
And I think like this is something that is a topic of conversation, especially among photographers of like, do you need a formal education or not? And I think we know that you don't need one. You can become a photographer, you can pick up a camera, you can make incredible images with zero formal education. But there's an element of having some type of certificate, degree, whatever it is, that like it not only gives you the confidence to say yes, I'm a photographer, I've trained in this, but it also is something that it kind of demands respect when right off the bat when you're working with clients. And so that was like you were able to go and get kind of not only a formal education but like maybe get that confidence and that like, oh, I have the credentials to back it up?
I needed that just personally. It's not something that, everybody needs to do. I think that for the most part, the work speaks for itself, where you just need the technical skills. And so I did gain a lot of that for sure. But my whole career has also been like, you know, I'm lacking in skills in this area. Where can I pull in some of that? And then I go do a workshop, or I sign up for an online
Right.
class, or I schedule a test shoot to try out new equipment. So that's kind of a constant thing for me.
Right.
And I think probably
Right.
for a lot of photographers too. I know a lot of your work, like you were talking about the technical versus your own connections.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, just it depends on what your subject matter is, but I'm sure that people are always wanting to push themselves and, find new creative challenges.
What was your kind of mental space at the time, like when you decided to do a program like that?
Yeah, well, what I'm realizing is if you look at what was going on with my life as a whole at that time, it wasn't just about the photography program in New York. I wanted to shake things up. I mean, I had kind of landed in San Francisco through a series of events and I love San Francisco, and I ended up living back there for another 6 years afterwards. But I thought that I was going to live abroad after college. And for various reasons, it never quite happened. And I didn't love the job that I was in. My relationship it ended up ending. um, I knew that I wanted to do photography, and I just really still had this itch. I had a lot of wanderlust. And I was in my I guess I was in my mid 20s. I just wanted to get out and explore. And so at that time, what I ended up doing was applying for these photography programs and then quit my job knowing that in, I guess, September, I would be starting a photography program somewhere. And then I took several months to go travel in South America. And so it was kind of this like all these things coming together where I needed to get out and shake things up and just kind of move.
Hmm.
Um, and then when I came back from that travel, I started the program, which still felt like I was traveling. I just was now in New York,
Right.
and the
Right.
currency was the same, and I didn't have to worry about a language barrier.
So then you finish this program, and what are your next steps?
Well, I had no job. I was out of money. So I came back to California, and that was another, just interesting personal time. I ended up back in my hometown. My dad and my mom were diagnosed with different, very serious illnesses.
Wow.
And so with my dad, it was kind of all hands on deck for a while. I got a couple part-time jobs and stayed in town. And then it wasn't until maybe about a year and a half later, I found myself with another job in San Francisco. So I moved back up to the city, and then once again kind of went through the pattern of like, okay, I'm working this job, but I know I want to do photography. Okay, I really don't want to work this job anymore. I really want to do photography. And I was doing it on the side. At that time, a lot of my friends were getting married, and I'd been in many weddings as a bridesmaid. I'd kind of been around a lot of weddings, and I could see how wedding photography worked. Like
Right. You're like,
how
I
you
can do
find people, yeah, how you find your clients,
it.
how you price for it. I had started shooting weddings, and I was working with a group that had several photographers that would be assigned out to shoot weddings. So that was good mentorship for me in that regard. And so what I was doing was working, Monday through Thursday at this natural foods company, traveling saleswoman type job. Friday through the weekend, I'd be either shooting a wedding or doing my best to edit everything. And so it kind of reached a breaking point for me where I couldn't do both, and I knew which one I was going to choose, but I was not quite ready. I just was sort of at my
Right.
wits' end with the situation. So at that point, I did go full force with photography, kind of supplemented it best I could with various San Francisco sharing economy type things like renting out a room, renting out my
Mhm.
car, driving for Uber and Lyft for a week. Just trying out some other, little gig economy
Yeah.
things until I could kind of get my feet under me.
Did you kind of go into the wedding photography world?
Yes, for sure. I think this is kind of a story that a lot of people have with that. But I also sort of thought, okay, I can see how I can get paid as a photographer to do this and I can support myself.
Hmm.
And then once I get this going, then I'll be able to have that supplement the other stuff that I want to do. But the catch with that is that it's actually quite competitive. I found that for 5 years, it was really all that I could put my effort into because I needed to build up a portfolio in order to be relevant and make those connections and then just let alone keeping up with the editing and everything. So
Hmm.
it took the majority of my time for a long time.
So, weddings for 5 years. Were you sort of starting to branch into other things kind of towards the end of that 5 years, or was it full gas on the weddings?
I mean, I definitely at that time was like trying out whatever else came my way a lot of
Hmm.
times. If I was interested, okay, I could do that. Um, and and also very in that mode still of like, yes, I'm a photographer. Pay me to do things and trust me, and I can offer you this service. I promise. Really, what was kind of a launching pad into different areas for me was some recalibration with the pandemic. I definitely had to rethink some stuff with weddings, and luckily I had rebranded, and a lot of that was around like adventurous elopements and things like that. So two things happened during that time. One, I have an aunt and uncle who do landscape architecture, and I had tried doing some shoots for them in the past, and they just ended up with a real backlog of jobs that they needed to document. I decided to up level my skill set in that area in order to be able to help them and take on those jobs,
Hmm.
because it was kind of a perfect pandemic safe job to do where
Yeah.
we're outside,
Hmm.
and we don't need a crew, staff. Like the client doesn't even need to be there, so that worked out really well. And I did quite a bit of research and some online classes on like, okay, what kind of gear do I really need for this and what do I need to be looking for? It ended up being really great for both of us because I was able to help them with that and, needed the consistent work during that
Hmm.
time. I ended up really enjoying it.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I don't have a lot of complaints about these gorgeous locations in Sonoma and Napa that I get to just like watch the
Yeah.
sunrise come up. And then from there, just through connections on Instagram and vendors working with other vendors and different projects, I've been able to kind of grow the landscape architecture and then into architecture and interiors. Also started working for Sonoma Magazine, which is a lot more lifestyle, but kind of overlaps with all of these things. And that's been really lovely for me to have in Sonoma County to kind of root me here and connect me to local businesses.
Landscape and interior photography is super fascinating to me. What people don't realize is how much effort goes into a single frame.
Oh, that was a huge difference for me. I mean, especially coming from weddings.
Right. And that's kind of what I want you to sort of give me that from like general lifestyle photography to like the landscape architecture and exactness of interiors. And then maybe some of the skills that you learned in that sort of up leveling process that are specifically for this type of
Sure.
photography.
Yeah, and I have some examples of that kind of thing that I can show you. One of the things, I mean, with landscape architecture, it was just like pretty much I'm always on a tripod. And what I try to do, I had to do a lot of research about like the best way to tether. It's not, I mean, I don't really know if we would call it tethering because what I ended up using is Cam Ranger, which sends it to an iPad so the client can look at
Mm.
the iPad. Because tethering, when you're just like out on this sprawling property, didn't feel like it really made sense. It wasn't logistically working to like be connected to a laptop, but we still want to be able to review this stuff. And it really is like one image at a time. We're trying to perfect that image. And so usually what I do with landscape architecture is I'll set it up so the framing is correct. And then a lot of times I'm bringing in different exposures from different frames. So the sky might come from one exposure, and then the actual building or the field in front or whatever would come from a different exposure. With the landscape stuff, it's definitely we're there at dawn. We're doing the evening as well, the golden hour to twilight. With landscapes, I mean, pretty different from the stuff that I do with when I'm shooting film. I have found that they want a lot of depth of field. For that, I'm using a digital medium format camera where the focus is really important, the crispness of the image. And then kind of similarly for the interiors, really framing up each shot deliberately, with the exception of maybe there's some vignettes around like a little styling detail or something, but thinking about how to best capture the room or a portion of the room and the client seeing that process, having them sign off on it, which was new to me. Just that kind of interaction with the client, When I first started doing more interiors, it was actually for Sonoma Magazine. And because it was editorial and they would have such a shot list, but not the kind of budget that would be behind, a business or a commercial shoot, I thought through how to best approach it so that I could still do the jobs, but with the budget that they could pay. I was having to be pretty scrappy and set up, okay, if we do lighting with just a couple of speed lights and I'm on tripod and, I can move through this pretty quickly to be able to also get the lifestyle shots with the family and everything like that is needed to complete this story. Yeah, I signed up for something online, one of the, creative courses online just to see how people shoot interiors. And so I ended up putting some of that to use. And then I've been able to kind of build that skill set as I get clients that are able to, pay for me to have an assistant and the lighting that I want to be able to bring in.
That's the other thing too about that type of photography. It seems like the buy-in to get to be able to make halfway decent images, you need a good bit of gear or you need a lot of technical know-how. But it sounds like for you, as far as you had the work lined up, the work was ready to go, but so you had to up level your skills to match that work.
Yeah, it was a little bit hand in hand. Well, for the landscape architecture, yes, I felt like, okay, I'm going to up level because I know that they have all these jobs that I want to do this well so that we can continue working together. And then with the interiors, I kind of realized, oh, I'm starting to shoot more and more of this for the magazine. Let me actually make sure I know what I'm doing here. And not just kind of fly by the seat of my pants the light looks good over here, so I'll do this little vignette, but then I walk into a kitchen that's not optimal lighting and I just have no idea what to do, so I wanted to make sure that I could handle any situation.
What about the technical post-production side of it? Was that something that you learned along the way, or was it just figuring it out?
Some of it, I guess I knew. It was just putting skills to different use, with bringing in exposures from different image files, straightening images, and then learning about, okay, you want to straighten at the end because that's the part that's actually going to affect the quality of the final image in terms of the file size. I guess that was also a little bit part of that class that I took. And then now I've been able to work more and more with an editor who really knows what he's doing. And that has been very helpful, where sometimes I'm just either to be able to stay on deadline or because I know that he's going to do a better job than I would. Blending modes and, taking the wrinkles out of a sofa or dropping in different backgrounds into a mirror or a window.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. I feel like I've actually I have hired someone who actually doesn't retouch, but she selects images for me because I can take the images, I can like, do rough selects, color correction, but especially when it comes to like the marketing, my own work and different genres and things, like it's just so much easier for me to pay her because it's going to take her so much less time than me like clicking between, is it this image or that image or this image or that image?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like just getting to that point where you can hire someone who's better than you at certain things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Mhm.
I think there's a lot that I tried to hold on to at first, and because with a creative business like this, your identity feels wrapped up in your work, or the other way around. It
Right.
um, it is so personal, but with the years of experience, I guess, and also wanting to reclaim some of my time to not just be in front of the computer, I've been able to let go of a lot of it and recognize, there are people who are better at this aspect than I am. And
Mhm.
absolutely, I feel you in terms of hiring people just to make selections is great.
Yeah.
What should
Mhm.
I put on my website? Also, you have a like an emotional connection
Mhm.
to a lot of images that maybe doesn't necessarily show through to other people. I was thinking about that, even making selects to share,
Mhm.
thinking like, is this just because I really
Yeah.
like it takes me back to where I was when I made this image?
Totally. There's a place for that. That's one of the reasons I want to have this sort of thing where you can share images that have a story, just have like you have an emotional connection to. I listed out like all the sort of tasks that I have to do as
Mm-hmm.
like a professional photographer and like curating images, making selects um, to post, like having my own photo editor was something that I was like putting off doing because, like you said, I did not want to sit in front of the computer anymore. When I realized that it was like this key component in all these tasks, I was like, it is 100 times worth it to hire
Yeah.
someone who can just do it and then it's done and I don't have to procrastinate on it anymore. Well, so how has your, sort of professional life, like as far as like the business side of things and the non-creative skills and experiences, how has that evolved for you over time? I know you said with wedding photography, you were like, oh, this will support my other photography, and then you're like, nope, I gotta fully go all in. So how has that side of things evolved for you?
So with the weddings, what I ended up doing is I had slowly been building a little team under that. The company still exists, and I have been able to move more into a mentoring role where we have a small team of photographers who they've shot with me, they've worked with me for years, but they go out and they're actually present at the weddings making the images, and then I handle the back end. So it's funny, I've like moved much more into an admin role. I enjoy it. I enjoy seeing their spark for being there and making better images and like getting my feedback, and then also just helping the clients to like feel held and cared for, and supported, and we're going to be organized and everything. But it has allowed me to reclaim the weekends for sure, and not having to drive to an engagement session or whatever it may be. And so I have been able to focus more on my own photography. I'm wanting to move more and more where my images and my values kind of align in terms of the stories that I'm telling, and I guess also the products that I'm selling,
Mhm.
where I am trying more and more to be working with wineries that are doing regenerative ag is a good one for me here in Sonoma County. It's growing more and more. Things like that, where if we're going to be selling products, if I'm, making these images to sell things, I want to feel really good about what I'm selling, and the stories that I'm helping to tell.
Yeah, like making sure that your clients and their goals and mission aligns with your personal values and your mission.
Absolutely.
And I think that's like it's more important than ever, but it is kind of that complicated thing where we are, as photographers, generally our job is to sell more stuff, is to create images that make people want to buy things. And if you're not, you know, a super fan of blind consumerism and, you know, ever expanding capitalism and things like that, then sometimes it's kind of like, okay, well, this is what I need to pay my bills.
Yeah.
But I also, like, I don't want to, you know, shoot for this single-use packaging product or whatever it is. Where do you sit with how you make those decisions?
I mean,
I love the sigh, by the way.
well, I think, okay, so one of the things I will say is that I'm not necessarily, I guess because I'm not primarily food or fashion, I don't get a lot of inquiries for that type of thing where I'm having to turn away, you know, like a fast fashion H&M or something. Right. You know, that's not like a struggle that I'm dealing with. It's really more about who I'm trying to target and the images that I'm trying to make on my own to show, you know, this is the type of work that I can do and bring in more of that type of client. Yeah, the regenerative ag is one thing that I've been thinking about a lot, just being in Sonoma County. I've been working more and more with small, or I guess new, young, up-and-coming winemakers who really are value forward in their thinking, and it's really cool to see. It's not this old guard, like just, you know, till and irrigate and fertilize everything. They're really thinking about, what are we doing with this land? You know, what are natural processes that we can use? How can we bring in sheep and chickens and cover crops and cut down on our irrigation and our need for fertilizer, and supporting young people, supporting people of color. So that's the type of thing I like to see, and I'm down to, you know, be part of it and help tell that story.
I have a couple kind of lightning round questions, and then we'll wrap this up and we'll go to the slideshow. Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Ooh, I'm pretty in the middle, but mostly introverted these days.
A piece of advice you got that you'll never forget.
One of my instructors at ICP was like, no matter what type of photography you do, it's gonna be a struggle to support yourself this way. So just do what you want. Go for that.
One piece of media that you're always recommending to people.
So one book that I found really helpful was The E-Myth. The E-Myth is entrepreneurship, and it really drilled in for me the idea of wearing many hats. We shouldn't be doing that. We really should be outsourcing what we can, because people are better suited to do these other tasks.
This one's fill in the blank. Taylor Swift is blank.
Blonde.
I love that. What song do you listen to on repeat?
Beyonce's Country Carter I was listening to on repeat when it first came out. Just like from the top, start the album over.
Okay, so Eileen, you're not leaving us just yet. Stay tuned for the next video where Eileen's going to do a slideshow presentation with some of her favorite images. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe for more photographer interviews and slideshows. And we'll be right back with Eileen and a slideshow of some of her favorite images coming up next. See you soon.
This is one of those like right time, right place, be ready type of things where I was getting out of the car at the Grand Canyon. So this is a shoot that I did for a local travel company that rents out these pop-up tents on top of Range Rovers. This was actually, if I remember correctly, it was my first cover of a magazine. So I included this because this was kind of some of my first dabbling with medium format film. Felt so good about the colors and the way that like the highlights and the shadows work together. It's creamy feeling. This is a really good example of these locations that I get to just watch the sunrise come up. Skill set is enough that you know how to capture the shot, but then like things like this you can't necessarily control for. This was fun for me because we had kind of hooked up with sort of a tour guide. I told him that I wanted to do something like this. You know, you meet these people along the way that are just really, she's so vibrant, and we had such a fun time making these images.
Yeah, and you can tell, like you can feel
So-
it in those shots for sure.